Happy Friday here on the Just Baseball Show. It is Friday, August 9th, and boys, time to harmonize. Arm, you better join Jack and I right now. All right.
Can we coordinate real quick? Can we coordinate so you go low, I go high, arm middle? I feel like that's the lightest ask of
I
arm.
agree.
Just baseline, middle, alto.
He
Flat.
doesn't
out of
even have to
gas.
harmonize. He could just talk it in, and then you and I will
You
legitimately
can
sing.
literally just talk it, and
I can
I'll
do
go
that.
high, Peter, you go low.
Okay.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Mailbag.
Mailbag.
That kind of worked.
That was one of our best, I think.
That was good.
I like that
Because there
roll.
was a little bit of buy-in from Aram, which is all we ask for. Just a little bit, like 5%.
I felt like I don't know. I'm trying to think of the play. I felt like Mike Bibby on one of those Heat teams. Like I just didn't have to do anything. Just hide in the middle. So that was
That's
perfect.
fine. Yeah, it's like kicking and screaming. Get the ball to the Italians.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if this is your first time listening to the Just Baseball Show, you're probably wondering what the hell is going on. Why are these
Turn
guys
it off
harmonizing?
already.
But it is the
Tuesday.
mailbag. We really appreciate everybody asking their questions, whether that be on our Instagram or on our Twitter. You guys came through, asked a ton of them. We grabbed our favorite 8. We're going to shout out everybody who asked them, whether, again, that be on our Twitter or on our Instagram. We're also going to talk about Aram's Top 100 update briefly, which you can find on justbaseball.com. And then we're going to do a full episode next week. And it is all brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. And remember, folks, download BetMGM, whether that be on iOS or Android, and use code JUSTBASEBALL. Why? You get a first bet offer up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if it loses. Jack is right to do that. It's absolutely crazy.
$100.
And then a slight idea. Yesterday on the show, we talked about some long shot award picks. And I put my money where my mouth is. Dylan Cease sprinkled a quarter unit. And if you want to tail along with that, but you're wondering why I did, well, you can listen to the last episode, or you can just blindly tail on BetMGM by using code JustBaseball, because if it loses, you'll get a first bet offer back up to $1,500. But remember, gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 or older. Terms and conditions apply. Aram, I ask you the same question after you're done with all of the write-ups. How's your mental? Are you okay?
I'm tired for sure because there was just a lot more this time around that I forgot about. Just the timing of this update. Jack, fortunately, I had Jack to help me with this. Like every player almost in the entire top 100 was updated or was promoted, excuse me, to like another level within the last time we updated it. So I had to update all the levels because those are all on the table. Then you had the new draft guys. So those are all new write-ups. And also kind of change the scale a little bit too on how we go about it. So I had to adjust for that as well. I'll get into that a lot more next week's episode, but basically the scale before for future value used to be focused on the high end outcomes, and then the risk, the implied risk would then kind of decide how they get stacked up. So if 2 players had 55 future value, the one that was more risky would probably be below that. I felt like that was too ambiguous, so I wanted to get a little bit more specific. So I'm now doing the future value grades on the most likely outcome, even if some guys do have higher ceilings or lower floors, just judging on what we think the most likely scenario is. So you might notice that the future value grades are a little bit lower than they were compared to before. And I like that because I think it's a little bit more realistic. So that was a little bit of an undertaking as well. But this is as good as I felt putting one out because it was really fun to get the whole draft class integrated in there. And I don't know if we've ever had 30 newcomers in a top 100 update. I don't know if we've had that many. So a lot of graduations, a lot of new faces. And I just think that it's wide open right now. I think there's no like consensus, even top 50, I think. So it makes it really fun. And I think there's a lot of names that maybe you haven't even heard of, even if you are a prospect head.
Jack, question for you. What is Aram's worst take on this top 100?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't think he had a bad one. I'm not just trying to like smell his farts, gas him up, but like
Hagen Smith over Chase Burns. That's bad, right?
no, it's not bad because like again, opponent's OPS near 1,000 against Chase Burns' fastball. Like it's 100, but at the end of the day, college hitters had no problem with it.
Caglione over Charlie Condon. Is that bad?
I don't think so. Like, here's the thing, man, and here's what sucks. I can't just like have an opinion and not hear the counter argument, and it's incredibly sound. You know what I mean? It's like I wish I could just be like, you're wrong. And he's like, you know what? I probably am. You're right. let's move on. It's always, well, here's why I think this. I'm like, damn, that's sound. I'm out. I'm done.
See, I prefer that, like people just like clowning a ranking thing, like, oh, this guy's like high or whatever, this is too low. The one that's the pet peeve, the only one that really gets me now is
Lost all credibility.
no, well, that one's a classic. I haven't gotten that one, but the no and then blank prospect. So like no Hayden Birdsong question mark. There's a search feature on the article. Did you search? Did you see him? No, he's not there. Okay. No, he's not on there. Like I just, you could ask why, like why, what was it that kept Hayden Birdsong out? Sure. But it's always the same like sentence. It's no player question mark. And it drives me nuts. It's the only one that drives me nuts.
My other favorite that I saw was, wow, Tyrone Lorenzo on this list, but no Kevin McGonigal. Fascinating. McGonigal's like 23 on this list.
There's a search toggle that costs us.
He's literally right there.
It costs us money, web development hours to add a search feature to the top 100 list. And it's, oh, where's Harleen Susana? Search! You can even Command F. But I wanted to make it, I didn't even want to make you have to Command F. There's a little search bar. You can search by team. You can search by player name. You can search by a lot of different things. Yeah. Anyways.
All right, we're off to a great start here on this Casual Friday mailbag. Again, we got 8 questions for everybody, and we got some absolute bangers. And we're going to start with question number 1. With the White Sox just firing Pedro Grifol, who are some capable suitors for 2025 and beyond to manage this team? Asked by Justin.CELLO11 on our Instagram. Jack, I'm going to throw that over to you. Just so everybody knows, the White Sox fired their manager. I think we all saw that coming. So, Jack, break it down for us.
So my favorite sentence of the statement from the Chicago White Sox was the middle paragraph put out in the release. You had Chris Getz's quotes and all that. By the way, Grady Sizemore is the interim manager. He was the bench coach, and he went from like honestly kind of doing nothing to now it's like, hey, you guys just lost by 8. Why? I don't know. Isn't my team. But the White Sox statement, the middle paragraph of a 3-paragraph statement, the first paragraph includes a quote from Chris Getz. Grifol, who was hired on November 3rd, 2022, led the White Sox to an 89 and 190 record over 1+ seasons at the helm, including a 28 and 89 record in 2024. It's a very favorable use of the word led. I'm not sure if the word led is the right thing there. The other thing that I want to point out is,
well, technically, he did lead them to an 89 and 190 record.
He led them. Yeah, you could say anchored them. He brought them down.
Well, that's the thing. Did he though? Like, I know he's not a great manager, but like also how can you tell? It's like if you put an F1 driver in like a 2002 Civic that barely runs, how can you tell if he's a good driver or not?
Good point. Make the most out of the shit car.
Yeah, okay, but that's a generous comparison. I should ask a car that doesn't fucking turn on. Like, what do you do there? Like, because the reality is, like, there's no manager on planet Earth. He could be the smartest human being in the world. He could probably see the future and still not be able to manage this team to that many more wins. Again, I've watched games where Grifol has done some things I'm baffled, and I don't think he's a good manager. But at the same time, like, can we really say he's like the worst ever because of the record and the way things went, when I don't think any manager is succeeding with this team? Forget succeeding. I think is within 20 games of 500 with this team.
But he's like 110 games under 500 as a manager.
Yeah, right. Like,
I think a lot of guys would be.
That's kind of next level though. And the thing is, like, it just seems like he lost the clubhouse so quickly last year and he never had control of it this year. And I think that there are a lot of managers that could have even 5% control over the clubhouse. And we knew it was at 0 at the end of last year. Like, that was the White Sox clubhouse situation last year with the Tim Anderson, Yasmani Grandal, Eloy Jimenez stuff. That was the worst clubhouse situation that we've seen in sports in quite some time. I feel like it takes a special kind of not good manager to let a clubhouse get to that point. The other thing is the newest saga in Chicago media is the alleged bad reporting that Pedro Grifol had a fractured clubhouse, but that was just another guy attacking a certain radio station that he's really liked to do this year for some weird reason. But getting back to the initial question, no, one more thing. I lied. One more thing. Pedro Grifol in 2024 was the second highest paid manager in Major League.
That's the funniest part.
$5.5 million. They paid this guy to do this.
Good for him. That's the American
Good for
dream.
him.
That's the real American dream. Getting
Mina
paid
Kimes
millions
always
of dollars.
says, my dream is to be a retired college or a fired college football coach. That's Mina Kimes' dream. Fired college football coach.
Jimbo Fisher just getting paid like $75 million to just go fishing.
Yes.
What a life.
It's pretty awesome. Now, getting back to the actual good question. This list should start and stop with Skip Schumacher. He's the guy. You want to interview Ozzie Guillen? Go ahead. You want to interview AJ? Go ahead. It's Skip. Go get him.
Run it back with LaRusso a third time?
Sure. Why not?
No, so Skip here, like, I agree. I think Skip has to be, you have to be begging him. I think you have to give him equity in the team to be willing to do it. Because you go from inept to the most inept franchise. Like, I mean, what he had to deal with in Miami it was a joke. And so I agree, though. I think that's the top candidate. Would you be surprised at this point if they just stay internal and just go with someone? Why would anybody want that job? In terms of just, I think you're seeing Chris Getz, who I don't think is a disaster, but you're seeing him kind of get mocked a little bit in the industry. I think, it seems like teams kind of run laps around him a little bit with some of these recent deals. And from that lens and just also kind of the way that the Crochet situation unfolded and how Getz had to be, outspoken about that. Like, would you want to insert yourself into that situation, from top to bottom? We're not even getting into Reinsdorf and all of that stuff too. Like, I think if you're a good candidate, you're either waiting for a better job opportunity or Skip's going to have other options. So, like, unless you're willing to pay Skip even more than he paid Grifol, who else? I think it's going to have to be someone that has no managerial experience that they believe in, that is just willing to take the opportunity. Otherwise, why would you want to join this shit show? I get that the team could be good in a few years, but look how fast Grifol got out of there because they've been so bad.
So I think the reasoning for wanting to take that job is it is a managerial job in Major League Baseball. And I know Skip would have something else lined up, but like, as of right now, he's unemployed in 2025. So, we'll see what formulates. We'll see who else gets let go. But you do get to live in the city of Chicago, and you do get to be a manager at the major league level. Scott Merkin, who I think covers the White Sox for MLB.com, was at Chris Getz's availability, his media availability after they fired Pedro Grifol on Thursday. Getz said, quote, "This allows us to get more of a head start on the managerial search. We are focused on candidates that are currently with other organizations and in uniform. They want to hire somebody external because they know internal it's a shit show."
I have an idea. I feel like it's going to be a guy who's not currently a manager, but maybe was a former manager who is willing to take a role with the White Sox in order to get back in that chair. Brad Ausmus, bench coach for the Yankees. Used to manage the Tigers, used to the American League Central. Yeah. I feel like it's going to be one of these bench coaches from like a pretty good team. I've heard a couple other names floated, but that was my original idea. But the idea that I want, that I actually think would make the White Sox worse, but I want it for entertainment purposes. Ozzie Guillen is just screaming. Yeah. I know you already mentioned that, but he's just screaming on every post-game interview about the White Sox. Let's see what he's got. Let's put him back in there. Just make 2025 White Sox just a circus. Be entertaining for me.
Dude, it's been a certain, like, did you not watch the Tony La Russa years? Like, did you not watch the Pedro Grifol years? It's been a circus. Then you just have a loud clown show leader.
That's why I said it's not the right idea. But if I'm talking about entertainment for myself and what I would think is funny, that's my option. But my real option is Brad Ausmus. But for me personally, it's funnier.
And if you really want funny, AJ would be the guy.
You know what's funny? AJ was talking on Foul Territory that he's reached out to the White Sox brass to try and help this team, and they've never given him an opportunity, which I think is fascinating. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah. I think they're going to steer away from anyone who's outspoken and anyone that's going to bring any more headlines their way. And Ozzie and AJ are in two different realms here, obviously. But AJ's not afraid to speak his mind. I think that's why people love him, and he does such a great job on Foul Territory. But like, if things aren't going right, I can see AJ telling it like it is. And, that is refreshing for us. I think if I'm the White Sox, I'm looking for a manager that, is a quiet, like vocal in the clubhouse, strong there. But I almost want him to be very coy with the media and very like reserved and keep it very simple because they need positive PR in the worst way.
One more name before we move on, a guy that has cut his teeth at the college level in the Midwest and is now in Major League Baseball in the Midwest. Chris Fetter is the pitching coach of the Tigers. I saw John Morosi float that. Fetter has been amazing for the Tigers. Problem is, there are not a lot of pitching guys, quote unquote, that are given managerial opportunities anymore. Those have kind of been few and far between. Like I'd say of the 30 jobs, 25 have a hitting background. I don't know the firm number off the top of my head, but Fetter, like he feels like the long shot. But if you do, kind of see this future of Thorpe and Schultz and Iriarte and Crochet apparently, and more guys coming through the fold. Apparently, like how can I not use that word?
I know, just funny.
Like if you view pitching as the future of your franchise, or at least the immediate future of the franchise, I could see a guy like Chris Fetter making some sense.
He ain't leaving Detroit.
Why not? It's a managerial job in Major League Baseball.
No, it's true. I just feel like they're building something there. It's almost like I compare it to football a little bit with Ben Johnson. Same city.
Yeah, it's like, why would you leave an OC job with a good team to go be a head coach at a bad team? Because you get to be the head coach of an NFL football team.
It's true. We'll see. Arm, you got anything else before we move on?
That's it.
All right. Question number 2. Who will be the most impactful September call-ups for playoff teams or teams just on the outside looking in? It's from Rye.McKinney on Instagram. Jack, I started with you last time. Arm, this seems pretty teed up for you, and then Jack right after.
Well, my pick is not off to the hottest of starts, and Kobe Mayo, who it seems just like the game is speeding up on him a little bit right now. It's been a rough go for him out of the gate with the O's. But kind of, I mean, looking across now, I still think like Junior Caminero is going to get up a little bit later once he can't kind of surpass that rookie eligibility. And that's a guy that, yeah, if the Rays are hanging around, can definitely give them a bit of a push. I look at Brandon Sproat with the Mets, and Sproat's a guy that has unreal stuff. I think we just look at the top 100 that we just updated. I mean, he's in the top 20 for us there. They may put him in the bullpen if they wanted to, and that could be a spot where in like multi-inning relief or even in high leverage, he could help the Mets there and kind of push them across the finish line. So there's a few other names. I want to hear what Jack says. I don't want to take them all, but I do think Sproat could be an option for the Mets down the stretch here, whether they do need him in the rotation and aren't too worried about the innings, or want to put him in a bullpen role where Sproat stuff out of the pen could be outrageous. One other like underrated name that Jack kind of talked me off a little bit because I think Tink Hence could make a little bit more sense. But Quinn Matthews of the St. Louis Cardinals, he has been so dominant. Left-handed pitcher who has 4 pitches for a strike. Fastball is really good. Another guy that they may want to limit his innings. I'm not sure if they do. That fastball would play out of the bullpen now because it's mid-90s. It would tick up to the upper with good characteristics. Nasty slider. But I also think that when you're looking at the rotation situation for the Cardinals right now, Quinn Matthews pours in strikes, has 4 quality pitches. If they really were feeling desperate, that's a guy that I'd be okay with pushing because I do think he's as close to big league ready as you're going to find from a double-A pitcher right now.
What do you got, Jack?
Belton Rushing was the first name that came to my mind because of the report that Rushing will only play outfield in AAA.
Oh, it's only now.
Apparently, it's only play outfield. He won't catch in AAA for the foreseeable future. That could be 2 weeks. That could be 2 months. Dalton Rushing will be an outfielder in AAA. What that tells me is they want his bat in the lineup, like now. If we see Dalton Rushing playing a little bit of left or DHing with a big club, I think that can be a shot of adrenaline for this Dodger offense. And yet, like, do they need it? No. Shohei Ohtani's been awesome. Freddie Freeman just got to 500 doubles in his career. He's the only active guy to do that. And I know that they're getting a little bit healthier, but man, I just saw James Outman get optioned again. And we're sitting here with a depleted bench. I could see Dalton Rushing being the best 8 hitter in baseball for the final 4-6 weeks of this season. And I think the Dodgers are wholeheartedly thinking that, he's got the opportunity to do that. So that's a guy that jumps to my mind on that front. The other guy, kind of along the Quinn Matthews, Tink Hence thinking, is Zebby Matthews in Minnesota. Yeah. If Minnesota runs into some serious issues, Zebby Matthews, yeah, he's allowed some base hits. Yeah, he's allowed some earned runs. This guy, I think in 3 AAA starts to this point, 18 Ks, no walks. You want safety on the hill. You want somebody that is never going to beat himself. Look no further than Daniel Zebulon Matthews. I think it's Daniel Zebby Matthews, man. So those are the 2 guys that jump to my mind, but rushing is like so far and away the clear-cut answer for me.
Yeah, this is not my MO, but I do have a couple of questions. For the Pirates, could Bubba Chandler help them this year?
It's a good question.
Capable of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Capable.
Because I saw him at the Futures game, and I really want to see him in a big league uniform.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, he closed out the Futures game. He closed out Spring Breakout. That fastball clearly plays in 1-inning spurts, and they could use 1-inning help right now. I know that a lot of people were quick to pile on David Bednar after his Wednesday evening collapse. That was his first blown save in 19 opportunities. Like, this guy, since his bad start, has been one of the better closers in Major League Baseball. So I wouldn't pile on him too hard, but like, Colin Holderman has been a shell of himself over the last 3 weeks. So that could really help. Now, counterpoint, and I'm going to bring this guy up here in a moment, but Aroldis Chapman just threw a ball 105.1 miles an hour. And like, let's save our thoughts on that because there is a question on this mailbag about that. But yeah, I could see him possibly helping the bullpen. Having said that, he's not, he doesn't need to be added to the 40-man this offseason. Like, you can play that game with him. I would see it as unlikely, but it would be fun for sure.
One more. Jacob Mizorowski with the Brewers. Can he help that back end bullpen?
Yes.
I bet they try it. I think that's a good one too, because they're either limiting his innings because they want to limit his innings, or they're limiting his innings because they want him in the bullpen down the stretch. I mean, Jack, you just I know you weren't in person there because they don't send you on the road in AAA, which I will always complain about. I think broadcasters should always be sent on the road. But you were able to see the data as it was coming in real time and watch that outing from Mizorowski. I know he was churning out crazy stuff. That guy, I mean, the command's definitely going to be a question, but in 1 to 2 inning spurts, I mean, that guy could be a difference maker in a bullpen that's already really solid if they want to make that push. And I believe would need to be added to the 40 after this year, if I'm not mistaken. I think so.
I'm picking 22. No, I think he might have one more year actually.
Still, I think based on how he's tracking, you're going to add him at some point next year anyways.
Yeah.
So I that's one that I do feel like could make some sense if he stretches together, if he puts together like, a 4 or 5 more appearances or even 3 or 4 where he's throwing strikes like he did last time out. I know, again, you just watched him yesterday.
Yeah, I sent the nerdiest text I think I've ever sent in my life to Aram last night. I said he's getting 7'5" at 98, 2,600 from 5'5". It's like, what does that mean? He's getting 7 feet 5 inches of extension, which is elite at 98 miles an hour on the fastball, which is really good. 2,600 RPMs, which is really good, at a 5'5" release height, which is very low. This guy,
especially for a guy that's that big,
he's a unicorn, an absolute unicorn. Now the problem is sometimes it goes to the backstop,
but it's sick.
I think this could play in the 9th inning. Well, absolutely. And I saw Mizorowski go to Brian Hudson on a rehab, and I was like, I feel so bad for this lineup, man. That's brutal.
He could go fastball only for the most part, and just in a 1 inning spurt, that's going to be 101 with those characteristics. Like it could be domination. So I wouldn't be shocked if we saw him at all.
All right, let's move on to question number 3. Unless you guys got any more just off the top of your head.
Not for contenders as much. I think most of those teams you kind of saw them now already, but you never know. There could be a couple, but I think those are mostly the headliners.
Perfect. All right, let's get to question number 3, which is, what teams are you most scared of to face if they make the playoffs? That was asked by @just_Lions on X. I have one in the American League and the National League. Do you guys want me to start, or do you guys have an answer that you want to get off the top of your head?
You start, baby boy.
All right, so in the American League, I kind of would be afraid to face the Twins. They got the monkey off their back, winning their first playoff series last year in what felt like 2 decades. They have the highest OPS at home among all major league teams at 799. So you don't want to face that offense in Minnesota. They're a top 5 defensive team, which When you're in between the margins, especially in the playoffs, I think that's important, and the Twins are great defensively. You go to the bullpen, Alcala, Brock Stewart, Griffin Jacks, Jaron Duran, even Cole Sands is really good. So that back end is elite. And I like teams that can hit for power and don't strike out too much. And we're used to the Minnesota Twins always hitting for power. The problem is that they strike out at the highest rates in Major League Baseball. Not this current lineup. They have the 9th lowest strikeout rate in all of baseball. Now, the pitching, Pablo Lopez has to step up. Joe Ryan is still just doing his thing, and Bailey Ober has been much better lately. So I think they have a good enough 3, a fantastic bullpen. It's not the same power or nothing offense that it used to be. They're good at defense, and you still have Carlos Correa and Royce Lewis in that lineup. So I would not want to face the Twins in a short series.
Jack, you grab it next.
I like the Twins shout. For some reason, pitching still takes me to Seattle, but I don't think Seattle's sniffing it right now. With Houston taking control of the AL West, I feel like this is like when they don't relinquish it. I'd be pretty scared of the Boston Red Sox, man. Like, playing at Fenway is very hard, and I don't know if they're going to end up hosting a wild card series or, playing in a DS to get them back to Fenway Park. But at the end of the day, pitching is what carried them through the front 2 months of the season. I think they have a formidable bullpen. And Jaron Duran in the postseason screams guy that can put team on his back. You got to remember that they're getting Tristan Casas back in the matter of a week and a half. He's already on a rehab in Worcester. So, like, there are enough guys in this lineup to make the Red Sox a little frightening for me, I'd say.
Pitching wise, though, like, you think that they can make it work enough in that regard?
I think so. Like, in terms of frontline talent, no, right? It's hey, you see somebody else's ace against their version of an ace. Like, I don't think that really works, but you run out all of these starting pitchers. It feels like they're always putting a mid-rotation guy forward where you may have runts of the litter in other postseason rotations. Like, I feel good about them running out 4 different 3 starters as opposed to a team running out 2 2s and 2 4s.
Yeah, I mean, and the question was what, for the first round or for the wild card?
Just a team that you don't want to face.
Surprising in the postseason.
Yeah,
because I was thinking like a team in like a wild card setting, like the Red Sox could, they could just blitz you offensively. So even if their pitching's not, totally up to par, like they're going to be able to knock you around a little bit. You can win a shorter series, I think, off of slugging. I think it gets harder to slug your way through a 7-game series. I agree on the Twins front. Like, I just think the way that they can pitch, especially with the starters when they're right, with that bullpen handing it off, and again, if the bats are hot at the same time too, you could get knocked in the face and swept pretty quickly before you even know it. Like a team like the Astros, like we're talking about them as like, I don't know what this team looks like, blah, blah, blah. But then once they get to the postseason, man, like they're still the Houston Astros. We're waiting on Kyle Tucker to come back, and that's a huge part of this thing. But assuming that he comes back, I mean, we clown the Kikuchi trade. I still think it was a nuts trade, but they have gotten him right from a pitch usage perspective. He's looked really solid overall. I mean, that helps them a ton. Altuve's one of the best postseason performers ever. You still have Yordan Alvarez, who also is right in that conversation again. And I think it might start to heat up a little bit now as we've seen some good swings get off. But that's still a team that I don't think anybody, no matter how much it looks like the World Series teams or how much it's maybe adapted a little bit since, I just don't want to see that orange H, when I'm getting ready to play a postseason series.
Yeah. And people are probably wondering, well, aren't you afraid of the Yankees? Are you afraid of the Orioles?
Yeah,
of course.
We know that.
We know that. That's I just wanted to preface that. So let's go to the National League. I'm afraid to face the Diamondbacks again. There's a top 5 offense by OPS this season. They're 6th in isolated power, 5th in slugging, 5th lowest K rate. So they got power and they got speed and they don't strike out. The bullpen is better than it was last year when they were in the World Series. Justin Martinez has stepped up and he's just unbelievable. Paul Sewald, Kevin Ginkel, Ryan Thompson, but they also have Dylan Floro, who they added. Joe Mantiply is still solid. And who knows, maybe AJ Puck does uncover whatever the Diamondbacks thought when they traded for him. Erod is back. Merrill Kelly is targeting middle end of August. They still, of course, have Gallen. They have Brandon Pfaadt. And maybe J-Mont steps it up in the playoffs. We remember him with Texas. And, of course, they have depth with Ryan Nelson. So they have a ton of pitching depth. And there's not that many weaknesses. And another reason I like the Diamondbacks is they can platoon so well. They're 8th in WRC plus against righties. You put Jock Peterson in there. Against lefties, they stack with right-handed bats, like guys like Randall Grichuk are hitting really well, and they are 6th in WRC plus. I think a lot of people just think, oh yeah, the Diamondbacks were a fever dream and they're heating up right now. But like, this team just went to the World Series. They felt that. They know that they can beat any team in order to get there. And I think this team might be better than it was last year when they made the World Series. So I do not want to face the Diamondbacks in a short series.
Well, the one thing on Puck, by the way, too, he uncovered something before the trade, and that's why they traded for him. And pretty much since then hasn't really stopped. So if he keeps this going, I mean, you have 20 straight innings now here from AJ Puck, where he has allowed 1 earned run, only 6 hits, 29 strikeouts, and 4 walks since he adjusted where he's starting on the rubber and his release point. So, like, if he's doing that, pitching like a superb high leverage arm with the other arms that you mentioned, Peter, like, and getting guys back now in the rotation, see if those guys can start to throw a little bit better, and Corbin Carroll starting to swing it the way he is. Like, I'm with you. They were just here last year, so a lot of the same guys. Another team that not the same amount of experience or anything, but they have that recent experience, and they know that they can stack up with just about anybody. But sorry, I cut you off, Jack. Who is your team?
No, you're good. I was just going to make a counterpoint on the Diamondbacks. You say that they're better than what they were last year. The only pushback I have on that front is, like, Corbin Carroll was playing like Corbin Carroll last year, and he hasn't done it this year. I know he's heating up, but then I thought about it for a little bit longer. I was like, well, Ketel Marte has leveled up past the point that he was at last year. So while you have one guy slide, you have the other guy level up. And I think they're probably even. But again, like, that caliber of team got to the World Series last year. So why can't they do it again?
Yeah. And then, of course, if Corbin Carroll just goes scorched earth, then you got him and Ketel Marte. And low key, we're talking about Bryce Harper in the playoffs, and we're talking about all these superstar level players.
I remember
Ketel Marte, like, didn't not get a hit for 20 straight. Shout out Zoom for giving me the filter.
Yeah. How about also the fact that this is the one big X factor, or has two, is, are they going to get Christian Walker back in time, and how's he going to look? And Gabriel Moreno, he's finally playing really well. You need a good backstop throughout the playoffs, especially with the way that Moreno's kind of handled the staff. So, and the way he was playing before the injury. So can those two guys get back? If they're back and they're going again, then I feel really, really good about it. But that is a big aspect of this whole thing too, is, can those guys get back? I think it's a great move by the D-backs to go get Josh Bell in the interim, just knowing that when he gets hot, he can fill in and spark it for you. And he's done exactly that. But also remember, this team added Jock Peterson this year too. And Jock Peterson's having like the best year of his career, which is the craziest part, at least from just a production standpoint of when he's playing. Of course, more cumulative stats in some other years, but he's on pace to have the best F4 output he's had since he was 24 years old. And in the role that he's in, he's just fulfilling it as perfectly as possible. 159 WRC plus. So that's a guy that definitely makes a big difference for them too. I would want no part of the D-backs right now, especially if they get those guys back.
Yeah. And I was going to talk about the Padres, but we've just talked about the Padres at length. But if you guys have updated opinions on them or just another team, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's San Diego, man. And like, just the sheer quantity of top flight relief options that they can go to right now is overwhelming. Like, don't forget Brian Hoeing was not a throw-in. He was a throw-in, but not a throw-in. He's got a 2.3 ERA in 34 innings this year. So like, Hoeing and Suarez and Tanner Scott and Adam and Morohon's been good. Yuki Matsui has turned a corner. Jeremiah Estrada. And then don't forget, like, the one guy that has yet to appear for them that is on their active bullpen right now has a World Series ring in 2016 in Carl Edwards Jr. Like, they have, it feels like there's no runt in this bullpen, which is crazy. And if your runt of the litter in this bullpen is a 2016 World Series champ, then come on, man. Like, they are in such a good position to succeed.
And if you're adding one of Joe Musgrove or Yu Darvish, let's say you don't get both back at full strength, just pray that one of them comes back. You pair that with Cease, who I personally think is going to win the Cy Young, and Michael King's still great. And Matt Waldron has been good enough.
Waldron in the postseason rotation.
I'm fired up for that.
Yeah.
And Musgrove looked good in rehab. That's the obvious team for me. Like, I really do feel like that's the no-brainer. I would want no part of this bullpen. I mean, when all Cease or King or maybe Musgrove or Waldron have to do is really give you 5 good innings, and then you can hand it off to, I mean, we're talking about Suarez with a 1.42, Scott with a 1.49, Jason Adam with a 2.3, and Morejon with a 2.66. Like, you can just hand it off to, and then Hoeing with a 2.34. Like, you can hand it off to 5 different guys to get through the rest of the game, through the postseason. So I think that just from that lens, like that's crazy. And then assuming that Tatis can come back, like that's going to be another aspect that just really invigorates the offense. I love the way Merrill has looked. He's blossoming into, oh, that's a great complementary piece that's filling a hole that they had in center to this is a potential star. And he's really rising to the occasion. He's starting to slug now. And that's a big difference maker for them too. Not to mention, Arias has been playing like crap over the last couple months. I still think that, one of the best bat to ball guys and the best bat to ball guy in Major League Baseball can get it going a little bit down the stretch here. And if he does that, man, I'd want no part of the Padres. So I think it's those two NL West teams pretty comfortably. I think you could poke a lot of holes in a lot of these other teams in the National League.
I agree. So before we get to question number 4, Jack, talk to us about our friends at Game Time. What's going on?
Yeah. So just a quick reminder that Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball. That makes getting big league tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer that it gets to first pitch. You get killer last minute deals, all in prices. You get views from your seat when you go to check out, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can use it for last minute deals, save up to 60% off for concerts, comedy, theaters, music. List goes on. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code JUSTBASEBALL, all caps, one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code JUSTBASEBALL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
And remember, go to the profile section on Game Time and put the code in there. A lot of people check out with their tickets and expect a code at the end. But on Game Time, you put it in the promo section and then you just check out with your tickets and they will take that $20 off your first order. And remember, link is in the episode description, but also use code JustBaseball on Game Time. All right, you guys ready for question number 4, which is, which current relievers have the best chance of making the Hall of Fame? That was asked by Big Red Analytics on Twitter or X, whatever. There's 2 answers that I think is the debate. Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrell. Kenley Jansen has 441 career saves. That is 4th all time. Craig Kimbrell is at 440, and both of them are still closers. Both of them are still pitching really well. So I don't think their jobs are going to be gone anytime soon. But it should be noted that Francisco Rodriguez has 437 saves, and he has a lower career ERA than the both of them, and he's not in the Hall of Fame. John Franco, Billy Wagner, Dennis Eckersley is in the Hall of Fame. Joe Nathan, Jonathan Papelbon, those guys are next on the saves leaderboard. Jack, what do you think about this one?
So you texted verbatim, it's kind of just Kenley and Kimbrell. Pushback. We just saw a guy 13 years removed from throwing the hardest pitch ever tracked in a Major League Baseball game at 105.8, hit 105.1, and then get a strikeout at 104.7. If we want to talk about impact on the game and the broad scope of the game, which I think is what that museum should be for, which is why I'm adamant that Bonds and Clemens and all those guys should be in the Hall of Fame. If we want to document the history of the game using that museum in upstate New York, why would Aroldis Chapman not be in there? Like, Chapman is there. He changed the game when it came to unlocking new numbers that we thought were humanly impossible on the mound. Again, 105.8, 13 freaking years, 105.1. Who does that? Nobody, ever. And that's why I think he's a Hall of Fame.
Interesting. He also does have a 2.59 career ERA.
And that's the more important number to me, because like, especially where the game's trending, the same way that I think, not as dramatically, of course, but I think the same way that you got to start to take wins with a grain of salt when you're deciding whether a player is Hall of Fame caliber on the pitching side. It can't just be as clear as, oh, did he win 250, 300 games? Just can't do that anymore. No one's going to ever get in. Saves to a degree are I think going to be a little bit adjusted as well, where maybe a guy that doesn't quite have as many career saves as some of these other, really, really talented closers before, maybe he gets in because he's got better numbers and more innings. And I think, when you have more closer by committee now and things like that, I do think that you're just not going to have that true, consistent closer as much. I mean, look at the Padres right now, like Tanner Scott, in 15 years ago, that guy's only really being acquired, I think, to be a closer for another team. And he's probably saying, I'm only closing. It's not a thing anymore. Like, closers don't just say I'm only closers now. Like, they'll fill a role and they'll go get outs and they'll join 2 other closers if they need to. We saw the same thing in the Phillies pen. So, I mean, the fact that Chapman's ERA is at 2.59, I think is a huge part of it. I also agree that there's just like that aspect of the way that he's kind of changed the game and what we think is capable of being achieved by a left-handed pitcher, period, or pitcher just in general. But I do think he's gonna have to do a little bit more. Like, I think it's got to get closer to that 900 inning threshold when you look at some of these other guys. And it doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon, but I just wonder if he's going to compile enough to totally get there. But I think he's probably got the best chance of most of these guys. I keep looking back at K-Rod though, and comparing to him. Of course, he's got the saves, but at the same time, a lot lower of an ERA. I mean, it's almost like it's more than a third of a run, and I think some cool narrative aspects to it as well, considering that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame regardless in terms of just having that pitch velocity there, and probably some other unique pitch velocity records that he will break.
Here's the reason why I said I think it's just between Kimbrel and Kenley. I'm still not over the fact that Billy Wagner is not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Because Billy Wagner is 8th all-time in saves with 422. I don't know if Chapman has 100 more saves in him. If we're talking about that 900 inning threshold that Arm was talking about, Billy Wagner is over that. If we're talking about career ERA, because Chapman still has more innings to get through, Billy Wagner finished 16 years at a 2.31, and he's still not a Hall of Famer. I just can't believe that. So if he's not a Hall of Famer, who is? And I agree with you, Jack, in terms of the impact. Like, I think you sold me on that. Like, that makes a lot of sense. The thing is, Billy Wagner was objectively better and is still not a Hall of Famer. So I don't know how I can put Chapman in, or really anybody, excuse me, if Billy Wagner is not in. Like, I'm even comparing to Kimbrel and Kenley. I think Billy Wagner was better than both of them. Still not in. So I don't think that Kimbrel and Kenley are absolute locks. I do think that Kenley is the guy because he's got the ERA below 3 and he even has more saves than Kimbrel does. And I also think that Kenley's going to continue to get more jobs, more opportunities to close games than Kimbrel will, just moving forward over the next year or two. But if Billy Wagner ain't in, I can't let anybody else in. I'm sorry. He's just too damn good. And if you're not going to let him in, then that's where I'm at.
The PED thing for Class A sucks because he's a guy that, I mean, is just on a direct course to being a Hall of Fame type of closer there too.
Real quick, Peter, without looking, how old is Emmanuel Clase?
28.
26.
Oh, a young 26 too.
Already
has 144 saves, has already compiled 290 and 2. So he's going to clip 300 innings by the end of this year. And this guy with that cutter, like he could go for, it could be Mariano-esque. Like it really could from like a production standpoint in the regular season. Of course, I don't think he's going to achieve all the things that Mariano did, being the guy for, a dynasty for so long. But in terms of just the way that he can age, it doesn't have to be 100. It could just be a little bit slower and be bigger then. And it's just going to be a cutter that still ties guys up. So maybe by the time he's done, we won't care about this as much anymore. Like it'll just be one of those things that wanes. So that's my one other, player, I guess I would throw in there, because he could legitimately just blow every record out of the water when it comes to closers and relievers in general.
Yeah. This guy has already, if he holds serve this go around, before he turns 27 years old, he would have led Major League Baseball in saves 3 years in a row and a career ERA under 1.8. Like, come on now.
Another guy that I don't think is going to make it, but I just wanted to bring up because I didn't realize he was this high on the leaderboard. Raisel Iglesias has 213 career saves.
Yeah, problem is I think you have to be the best in baseball at any given point, and I don't think Raisel has sniffed like the top 3 at any point.
No, yeah, I don't think he's going to make the Hall of Fame either. I was just surprised to see him among active guys He's
It's
only
an
behind.
accumulation game. And going back
Yeah.
to Arm's point, like, I mean, think about the Devin versus Hader conversation. I know Hader was considered like, the best reliever in baseball, quote unquote, but there were stretches there of several months where you could say that Devin Williams was the better pitcher, yet he wasn't the one throwing the ninth inning. So saves are just a tough way to look at this.
Hector Neris has 104 career saves.
Yeah, well, he was a
That's
closer
insane.
before this Cubs go around. I think a lot of people forget that Hector Neris had a career before he was 37 years old as a Houston Astro.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
That's what I was like, 104.
You and
When?
everybody else.
When? Anybody else? But do you guys think that Kenley and Kimbrel are going to make it? Just to wrap this up, I kind of don't think Kimbrel's going to make it.
I feel like if one gets in, the other has to, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong, and Kimbrel does get more opportunities, and they both end up with 500. I mean,
I think they both. I do think they both get in. I mean, I just think they've both been so impressive, and by the time they're done, I think they are going to have just better overall cumulative numbers, I think, than Wagner, and it's going to be close enough in the ERA department. I think both of them do get in.
Jack?
I think both of them get in. Also, if I'm not mistaken, Billy Wagner has one more year on the ballot. He missed by 5 votes this past year. I don't think that happens again. I think he gets
in.
Creates a world where Kenley and Kimbrel get in, and I think Chapman can follow suit.
It's putting a mental block in my brain. Like, I can't
for
even
sure.
look
He
at
is
other
the Hoover
relievers.
Dam of Cooperstown relievers for you.
100%. I need to see him get in before I can even talk about other relievers.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to question number, I think this is 5 or whatever. What is the greatest play you've witnessed live at a baseball game? Asked by Big Nate 2144 on Twitter. I have my answer.
Good question.
When Shohei Ohtani struck out Mike Trout at the World Baseball.
Oh yeah,
that was the coolest highlight I have ever been a part of. I was taking video and we had press passes, so we were right next to the dugout. I had a perfect view. Mike Trout hitting right-handed. I'm looking directly at him, and then of course with Shohei Ohtani, watch that entire at bat, get it on video. Ohtani strikes him out. Japan is celebrating, and I sit down in my seat, like the seat right behind the dugout, and I just take a second. I'm just looking around, just enjoying the moment. It was the coolest thing I have ever seen live at a sporting event.
Yeah, I think that would have to be the answer as well. So I'll try to pivot to like
clean sweep. Yeah, clean sweep. So let's pick our second favorite.
I've seen a couple no-hitters, like they're cool. There was a weird one that was like a cool memory, was the Henderson Alvarez like walk-off no-hitter while he was on deck on closing day at a Marlins game. But man, I don't know if I've seen, like, I don't know if there's something that comes to my mind that was like more insane than I mean, the World Baseball Classic. Jack, if you have something on the top of your head, I'll try to jog something in the meantime. But I mean, the Trout versus Ohtani, there's very few instances where right at that moment that you're watching something that you'll never forget.
Yeah.
And that was one of those where I just, you felt the gravity of the situation. And I don't know if there ever was anything for me in sports, specifically in baseball, where I've really felt the gravity of that situation in the moment.
That is the clear-cut answer for me too, for everything that you guys said. This isn't I guess it's a play, yeah, but I was 8 years old sitting first row of the 200 level at US Cellular Field for Michael Barrett punching AJ Pierzynski after their collision at the plate, and I was like, this is crazy. And it was Cubs White Sox, and I think I told this story a couple of years ago on the show, but when I was in short season ball with Auburn, with the Auburn Double Days in 2019, Michael Barrett was the Nationals catching coordinator. And I was sitting next to him in the dugout for like 30 minutes, just conversing with another reliever and him. And it took me like 30 minutes to realize that was Michael Barrett. So I was like, dude, I was at the game. He was like, fuck, how old were you? I said 8. And he just got up, he was pissed. That I was 8 years old.
You set me on a course of violence now, and I've never stopped because I saw it.
Exactly. Yeah. You and first person shooter video games are what really dug a hole for me in my life.
I just remembered one. And how did I forget this? I'm an idiot. Derek Jeter's last game at Yankee Stadium. Wow. The walk-off was the coolest thing I've ever seen. I think that's even cooler for me than the Ohtani Trout situation.
Yeah.
that fastball was served up as much as any fastball I've ever seen. I don't even care. Like that, him in his final game at Yankee Stadium, talk about another one of those moments where obviously that's why we're there. Like I got to see that with my father, who's no longer with me, and my grandfather, who's no longer with me. So on that lens, it's even cooler and more special. My grandpa was born in the Bronx. So, personally, that was just a really, really cool situation there. But just the festivities, like the tension going into the game, chanting his name legitimately the entire freaking game. And then even if you tried to set it up to end like that, like the way that it still went so perfectly, like so perfectly, that was by far the coolest thing I think I've ever seen in person in any sport. Just him walking that off of Yankee Stadium was just unreal.
Yeah, that's like one of my core memories. And I was just watching it on TV. I can't imagine actually being there in that moment.
Yeah.
Jack, to your point where you're talking about a brawl, I've always wanted to see one in person. And I've been to hundreds of baseball games, college baseball, whatever. Never seen a brawl. Never in person. Arm, have you?
95% of the time, they are incredibly underwhelming.
Yeah, I can imagine, but I want to see one. Like, I don't know. I just haven't gotten to be able to see one.
Sure.
Arm?
I think I've seen a couple in the old Marlins Stadium. Some rowdy teams I had in like 08, 09, 2010, but nothing that crazy.
All right, we got 3 more questions left. And before we get to our last 3, let's take a quick break. All right, we're back to the mailbag. And the third to last question is, you guys were first on Ellie De La Cruz. Who's going to be the next out of nowhere guy? Asked by DVOS18 on Instagram. And Aram, a lot of credit to you because you were very early on Ellie De La Cruz. So who's the next guy, Aram?
Yeah, it's an easy one, I think, actually. Jesus Mate. Yeah, Jesus Mate in Milwaukee Brewers org. Around the same time that we hopped on the Ellie train, like 17 years old, maybe closer to 18. Mate just turned 17 years old. That's a guy, like, if you read one report in that top 100, read the Jesus Mate one. I have not seen a 17-year-old that advanced at the plate from an approach standpoint, switch hitter with elite bat speed already, plus runner, good arm. Like he's a freak. The fact that he can do as much damage consistently and also make as much contact as he consistently does with like as many moving parts as he has to his swing. Like if he tones it down a little bit, I think he can even level up to another degree. But it's a ridiculous amount of freakish talent, bat speed, power. It's tools across the board, and then I think the lowest chase rate that you're going to find at the lower levels. So I think Jesus Mate could be an absolute monster. He's playing shortstop right now. I think he's got a shot to stick there too. I mean, you don't find players like him very often, and the fact that like his name reads in English as Jesus Made, just like it just makes it perfect.
Yeah.
Jack, do you have a player that you've fallen in love with?
Jesus Mate is probably the guy, but I know Aram and I are both very interested to see what Eduardo Tait in the Phillies system does moving forward. 17-year-old catcher that's already killing at the low A level. Starlene Cabo was kind of the first one that jumped out to a lot of people, and that was at the beginning of the year, but like somehow Tait has been better offensively. And that's a catcher, again, in a big market like the Philadelphia Phillies that can develop their top prospects. I think they're in a good spot with Eduardo Tait.
Some good names.
Yeah.
Just good baseball names on top of it, too. All right, let's get to question number 7. Who are the players that teams need to give a Ronald Acuna, Julio Rodriguez type extensions to right now? That was asked by Cole Gasparovich on Instagram. I think I got that right. So I have 2 obvious answers, and then I think we can start diving into guys who might deserve an extension of that size. Gunnar Henderson certainly deserves a massive extension from the Baltimore Orioles. Ellie De La Cruz certainly deserves a massive extension from the Cincinnati Reds.
Too late. Both of them, too late.
Yep.
Explain that further.
They're going to be $500 million players. It's way too late. With the impact off the field that Ellie De La Cruz can provide. Like, he is clearly already face of baseball type stuff. Like that sit down he did with Jeff Passan, who's the most electric player in baseball. You're sitting in front of him. Like, come on, man. No 22-year-old should have the moxie to do that, on like a Sports Center interview, but that's what he has. There are people in San Diego, there are people in Canada, there are people across the pond in Europe that have Cincinnati Reds jerseys because of this guy. He's a $500 million player. And for Gunnar, I think Ellie's a Boris guy too.
I was going to say, what's the one thing that they both have in common that's
They're
not?
both Boris guys. Yeah. So I think they're priced out at this point. And Gunner's proven to be this war accumulator at such a young age. His service clock is already ticking. He's going to be at 2 years plus at this point. I mean, dude, like, you're running out of time. You're not getting a deal on that. So, Baltimore could retain Gunner. It's going to be a $500 million contract. Escalator should get it to 550. For Ellie De La Cruz, like, Cincinnati's already priced out. Just enjoy him for the next 4 years.
Arm, you agree?
I do agree. I mean, unless they can make the money work, which I think he's in the boat of, hey, even if you're a smaller middle market, you find a way to pay him, and just the way that you can. And it'll have to just be, you're not going to leverage those years. You're just going to have to kind of do it at the end of his control, and pay him pretty much close to whatever he felt like he was going to get in free agency. Cause that's how it's going to go with the Scott Boras guy. But I do think that he is so valuable from a marketing, jersey, everything perspective. He's going to get you more national TV games. Like, he's going to do everything that, I mean, you got to find a way to make that money work if you're the Reds. And I don't know if they will, judging by their history, they may not, but I think it is probably too late. Gunner, again, Scott Boras doesn't do it, man. So between that and the way that they're already performing, I think it's going to be really tough. I think you got to look at the players that are all-star caliber, but are not perennial all-star MVP candidate type, that would take the bird in hand, and that probably aren't represented by Scott Boras. I look at like a Stephen Kwan, man. I'd lock that guy up tomorrow, because at the very least, even if the deal goes south is still probably a 2 to 3 WAR player consistently. What he's doing now is 5 wins basically. That adding the power, the defense, the speed, it's just everything that he brings to the table. I mean, I'd have no problem giving him a huge bag. And again, it's relative, right? You're not giving him $300 million, but buying out the extra years after this, because you still have a lot of years of control leverage against him. It's not like he was a first-round pick. It's not like he's the most marketable guy that's making money left and right otherwise. So I'd imagine, I don't want to speak for Steven, but I'd imagine if he was presented with an Andres Jimenez type contract, but a little bit more, I'd imagine he takes it. And, for the Guardians, great. Now you've got Jimenez, you've got J-Ram, and you've got Kwan locked up, and you can actually afford them for the duration of their contracts.
Yep.
I got a few. I think the Mets should try and lock up Francisco Alvarez.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Rangers should try and lock up Josh Young, because I want to pair Josh Young and Corey Seager on that left side of the infield for the next decade. Because Josh Young, when he first came back, he just immediately gives this Rangers lineup more life. He came up last year. He was solid. He looks great again. Top prospect. I think we're pretty confident that he's going to hit for a long time. I'm not saying that you have to give him a ton of money. Like I said, probably even less than you'd give to Kwan, but I would offer him something now, I think.
So to bolster your point, you could probably get a discount because he's been unavailable.
That's my concern.
To counter your point, he's been unavailable.
True, and that's why I'm not offering him $500 million, but I would try and get him for a decent amount of years at a low AAV, because of course money's running out there, and I know, and maybe that would hinder it, but I also think potentially if they want to get him now, it's a good time to do so, I think.
Now, very similar line of thinking, but I've got a guy with an even higher what could be, and there's precedent to this team doing this with guys cut from that cloth. Royce Lewis is a name that came to my mind, where it's like you have the clear deficiencies. Hey, man, you can't stay on the field. We're not going to give you 200, but like we'll give you 90 over 7 years. Think about it. And he could be like, well, there's no promise that I'm going to stay healthy. And all of a sudden that can turn it into the best, most team-friendly deal in Major League Baseball. They played that game with Buxton. And it's not like we're sitting here saying that the Twins are hemorrhaging money by paying Byron Buxton. Because when he's on the field, he's worth the money. Problem is he's just not on the field. Like, you roll the dice with a guy like Royce Lewis. So I would prefer to do that with a guy that like his ceiling is here as opposed to the ceiling being a bit lower in Josh Young if you're paying an unavailable guy.
Yeah. I have a couple more. I think it's too late for the Red Sox to give Jarren Duran an extension. What do you guys
I don't
think?
think it's too late. But I don't know if I would. He's
good.
kind of he's just older. So I'd just kind of ride it out.
Yeah.
Ride out the control. I think Merrill's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
From a makeup perspective, the fact that he's playing a good center field now, he's going to be a 3-win player. Or he's going to be close to a 4-win player by the end of this year, and just getting better and better and better. So young, so you could commit, you can commit 10 years, and he's what, going to be 31, 32 on the other side of it. And that's one that I would be comfortable making it, quite expensive, but I think with the years of control, they can make it work. And then one of the like cheaper Tovar type of deals that I 100% would do, and I still think he's one of the more underrated players in baseball, is Zach Neto. Like Zach Neto continues to just get like overlooked and kind of disrespected because he's part of an inept organization. And I think a lot of people forget that he fully skipped the minor leagues, right? So this is a dude that's finished out his development at the big league level. And I think we're really watching him blossom before our eyes, both defensively and offensively. The glove has come along a ton. He's going to go 2020 this year while playing fine defense at short. Even if he ends up moving off the spot, he'd be a machine at second base too. And another guy that's going to be like a 3.5 win player.
We clown him consistently, but the Angels have two excellent building blocks offensively in Neto and Logan O'Hoppe. Like really good building blocks.
Yeah.
One more name that I want to throw at you guys. Jackson Merrill. Like,
oh yeah,
you said that.
Oh, just said that. Yeah,
I totally missed that. My bad.
One I have, Anthony Volpe. He's 22 years old, or 23. He's put up a 3.6 FWAR already, 3.3 BWAR. The defense is clearly there, and he went 2020 as a rookie in Yankee Stadium, which we know is a tough place to play any position. It's probably the most pressure on any position in Major League Baseball, the shortstop for the New York Yankees. Now, I know offensively he hasn't taken any sort of massive leap, but we're still looking at a 101 WRC plus for Anthony Volpe. He hasn't blossomed into the hitter, like I said, but maybe you're buying a little bit low. If you truly think that he can be a perennial 25-25 guy with elite defense, and the offense hasn't even shown up this year, and he's still going to be a 4.5 win player. And because the offense hasn't gone crazy, maybe now's the time to pay him. I would try and get to him with an extension this offseason and see what he says. And it's okay to lowball him, but just see if he takes something.
I do it because, the Yankees always like to go, sign those mega deals, right? And I think if you could lock up your shortstop for pretty cheap and, have that lower AAV moving forward, and, once eventually Stanton's off the books and these other guys, you can look at shortstop and say, taken care of. Don't have to worry about that spot at a very affordable cost. And you can really start to funnel that money into other directions. So I think that would make a lot of sense for the Yankees because they don't usually have guys that come up through their own farm system that they actually keep very often. So they don't have the opportunity to do these kind of pre-arb extensions as often as some other teams. So this is a good money saving opportunity for them. And then they can go spend their mega deals at other positions.
Like Dansby Swanson signed a 6-year, $177 million contract. If Anthony Volpe has a similar career to someone like Dansby Swanson, you're getting him from age, 23 to 30, maybe signs a 7-year deal, sort of that Andres Jimenez, probably more because he is Anthony Volpe, New York Yankees. They might just pay him a little bit of a premium, but yeah, I think something behind there would be smart. Any other off the top of your guys' head? I like that you mentioned William, or maybe he hasn't been mentioned. Should the Brewers extend William Contreras?
Too late.
Yeah.
It's too late. Yeah.
I just wrote that one down. It's like
and also they've got Caro on the way.
Yeah.
I think they're ready to just churn that.
You could say Jackson Churio, but they already extended him.
Yep, they already locked him in.
Anyone else? Should we move on to the last question?
No.
All right, let's get to question number 8. And our final question is, who is the prospect from the last 10 years you guys were most convinced was going to be an above average MLB player and just never panned out? Asked by 4M Opinions on Twitter. I have a throwback one that I think is kind of funny. I've talked about Greg Bird at length. That's not my answer. Well, it is my answer, but I've just talked about him so many times I wanted to come out with another one. coming from the Yankees, I thought Chance Adams was going to be a beast. Chance Adams was not really a beast, but he had a 2.89 ERA in AAA. He was ranked on so many top prospect lists, and I was watching video, and I thought, this guy is going to be such a good pitcher for the Yankees. He's got a mid-5s ERA in AAA for the Rockies, and he's 29 years old, so that didn't exactly pan out. I got a couple others before we actually get to Jack and Arm, probably more nuanced answers. I thought Tyler Kolek was going to be a stud. Remember Arm? I think he was throwing like 102 in high school. Just this enormous human being that just never amounted to anything. And one guy I'm still holding on hope for, Forrest Whitley with the Astros. He had like 5 pitches, 6'5". Thought he was going to be awesome. Isn't. So those are my answers. But Greg Bird is my answer. I fell in love with him, but I also remember thinking Chance Adams was going to be a beast. What do you guys got?
Give me a deep cut name, Jack. Come on.
Braden Shipley. Remember that name?
Yeah.
I don't even remember.
You don't even remember? Braden Shipley was a name there. Man, I don't know. Like, I thought Gordon Beckham was going to be the savior of the White Sox growing up. Like, he was a dog at Georgia, like literal dog, DAWG. But no, Robles is the answer to me that like will forever jump out. Like Victor Robles was that guy, and it just never really worked. Riley Pint was kind of the first guy that I saw that threw 104. And Pint was, I want to say, year after Tyler Kolek. But Kolek was just kind of like your big Texas boy. And Pint was this long, loose kid throwing 104 miles an hour. And I was like, how can this not work? And it turns out that it didn't work.
Bubba Starling is one for me that was just like tooled up beyond belief. I just thought that would be a guy that could be, an absolute monster. I'd love to mention like, and that was the Royals, by the way. And that was a guy, he got crazy money at the time to sign. Lewis Brinson, like as much as I'd love to say that I thought he was going to be good, like I didn't really fully buy into that one. But the Miguel Cabrera trade that the Marlins made is kind of what got me into prospects, because it opened my eyes to the whole process there. I'm like, why would you trade a future Hall of Famer for a bunch of guys in the minor leagues? What are the Marlins hoping to do aside from not spend money? And so I kind of just dove into that and got interested in the development. And then when Cameron Maybin and Andrew Miller didn't pan out, I became very fascinated by why didn't they pan out? Why were scouts wrong, etc. Cameron Maybin looked the part. And I know he had a nice career overall, but this guy was supposed to be, a perennial all-star. This guy was a headliner along with Andrew Miller, but a headliner in that Miguel Cabrera trade. And when he first came up with the Marlins, I think if you look up the stats, when he first came up, they're the Florida Marlins, he went nuts as like a September call-up. The speed, the bat speed was so impressive. He could go get it in the outfield. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's going to be a monster. And then it never really ever happened again, especially with the Marlins. So Maybin's one for me that, man, I really did think that it was going to come together and it was going to salvage at least the sting a little bit from the Miguel Cabrera situation. And he was just going to be like that 5-tool type of center fielder. And unfortunately just didn't happen. He did end up carving himself still a nice career, which, I'm happy for his sake, but that was a guy that I expected a lot more from.
Anything else, boys, before we say goodbye?
I don't think so.
Well, that was an electric mailbag episode. Hopefully everybody enjoyed. And if you did, the best way to support is to rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. A 5-star review would be greatly appreciated. And if you are so kind to leave a written review as well, or you could hit that big red subscribe button on YouTube, or you can do all of them. All of it is greatly appreciated. You can also check out our merch store. We got new merch in there. We have this line of t-shirts. It is a Just Baseball logo with every team represented. I just ordered a Yankee one. There's every single team. Go check it out in our merch store. I'm sure on YouTube, our guy Peyton is going to put up kind of the graphic of what the shirts look like. They're absolutely electric. Brandon Anderson did an amazing job on them. And shout out to our guy Clay Snowden, package them all up, in charge of the merch. Shout out Clay. Remember to go check out Game Time. The $20 off using code JustBaseball. Bet MGM as well. For Jack McMullen, Arm Layden, I'm Peter Apple. With that, thank you, everybody.